Hello again, indie authors. Welcome back to Sid Mickle Publications. I'm Sid Mickle, and we are beginning part 3 of our 10-part series on how to write a Civil War fictional novel. Today in part 3, we're going to talk about pacing, and we're going to talk about the key battles that we're going to use to impact that pacing. Before we do that, let me give you a little bit of information. Over the course of the past week, we had a number of viewers check out our video. We had 58 views on part 2. Now, 58 views for most YouTube creators would have them sitting in a corner crying. I don't feel that way. We have 58 people who were interested enough to watch our video. And the retention, which means the length that they watched the video, was very good. About 60 to 70% of the video was watched by those people. Not 580, not 580,000, 58. And we appreciate you very much for doing that. If it's 28 or just 8, we will do this as a collaboration together and be very happy doing it. Okay, let's move on with the book and the actual writing. If you remember, we had gotten chapter 1 pretty much written, roughly. We had gotten chapter 1 done with the opening, the very important and key action sequence, in good shape at our last conversation. And we had looked at the remainder of chapter 1 and discovered that I had fallen into my typical habit of too much detail and what is called world building and exhibition. I think the writing was good. It was just in the wrong place and it made no sense. And I don't know if you're like me. Maybe you have that same issue of overdoing the details. In other words, when you get to this part in the book that you're writing about who the characters are and you're trying to develop them, you put too much detail. There's an abundance of things there that just don't add to the story and make the story very dry and kill the pacing. Instead of that line and the waves of pacing that we're trying to accomplish, we take that pacing and drive it down, which means the reader is not going to be interested. We bore them to tears with too much detail. Okay, so we went back and we edited chapter 1 over the course of the last week. And I believe chapter 1 is finally up to speed. I think it has been revised to the right level. I think the polishing of those first 16 pages of action, because we've got to hook that reader, hold them. We're not famous writers. We can't. The reader is not going to wait on us to give him action. He wants action at page 1. That revision is completed, and I think it's a very good chapter. I think it actually is one of the better chapters that I've ever written. So on to chapter 2. Over the course of the last 3 days, I have done very little other than write. I think it's an important thing to be in that frame of mind and trying to get that, I think, second most important chapter. We've hooked the reader, I believe. We've earned maybe the opportunity to carry them into chapter 2. And if we can deliver enough interest, if we can make that reader curious enough in chapter 2, we have a very good chance of keeping them in the book and forcing them, or inspiring them would be a better word, to read the rest of the book. So 1 and 2, I think, are incredibly important chapters. And I think after yesterday's first real deep revision of chapter 2, I think it's going to be very solid. Just technically, let me tell you what I did. I went back and edited again chapter 1, the entire thing. Did my first cut of edit and rewrite in chapter 2. So I will go back and I will edit both, I think, lightly again. That's how I do it. And I have a question to ask of those of you who are collaborating with us, you 58. Do you do it this way? Do you write blocks, go back and edit and rewrite and then move forward? Or do you just write your manuscript and come back and start a full revision? I don't do that, but I'm not saying that's a wrong way. I just would really like to hear how you do it. maybe I can learn from your technique and improve my own writing. That's something we'll look at later on. So, as we sit down today, we've got to think about something I just mentioned, and that is pacing. Today's video is about pacing, and from our research, we chose some key battles, and let's just quickly review those. Winchester is in chapter 1. It's the opening. It's the crisis. It's that moment of frustration and potential failure from the primary character or the main character. We introduced a lot of secondary characters and the villain in chapter 1. Chapter 2 moved to a new set of circumstances with some key changes to the entire list of characters and the Battle of Cross Keys. Coming up, we will go in chapter 3 and work on the 7 Days battle. But in chapter 2, so you know, that point in the book is where Stonewall Jackson has now very competently shifted and maneuvered his forces against two larger groups who were trying to link up and crush his army. That was John Fremont and General Shields. They were attempting to link from the northwest and the northeast, gather together and crush Jackson in the Shenandoah Valley. He split his forces at Cross Keys and in a very risky maneuver, and the Alabama 15th inflicted the most casualties of the day in a battle, the very first shots fired that decimated the New York 8th Infantry. That's how that battle went, a decisive Confederate victory. So decisive that Fremont, after a day-long group of fights and skirmishes all over that area, withdrew. And it caused the withdrawal of the entire Union force. That in turn took pressure off of Richmond because as Fremont and Shields moved, Lincoln decided to reinforce them because Jackson had taken over really the valley. He had taken the Shenandoah Valley under control. Key things to remember because they're significant movements, emotions, victories, and successes by this group that we're writing about. Now, those aren't sustained. It's just a very well-known fact that the Confederate Army, as it moved through different battles, and 7 Days being one of them, the next thing we're going to write about in chapter 3, they sustained heavy losses. Now, there were losses that were very significant on both sides, but the South could not resupply. They could not arm themselves very well. They could not bring up food. They could not bring up uniforms. They struggled with all the material resupply. But much more importantly, they couldn't resupply men. And as their losses mounted, the regiments that were set up to start with 950 to 1,000 men, 10 companies of 100 is ideal, they were down to fighting forces of less than 300 in some regiments. It was a crazy loss ratio as the war progressed that just could not be sustained. And that was the power of the Union's true advantages in manufacturing and supply and manpower. But to our book, we have chosen these battles. As I said, Winchester, we've done Cross Keys as well. We'll do 7 Days. Later on, we'll do Malvern Hill, Manassas, Harper's Ferry, Fredericksburg, Antietam, and Gettysburg. Now, those are significant battles that the Alabama 15th, the group that our characters were a part of, really had a great deal of impact on and participated in each of these battles. Why do we pick this number of battles in these battles? If you think about pacing in a book, it's my belief that a book has a high pace or a good standard rate of pace, and then the action bumps it up and it settles back down to that normal or very well written pace. Another incident or subject or issue will bump the action up. So it's like a wave. And where you see that fail is if you have very small bumps and there's a dip in the pace. Your pacing is good. You get a very slight bump with an action scene and coming off of it, you really go down in pace. That's where the readers start to drop away because they're bored. You've no longer got them hooked. It's the most critical aspect, I think, of writing the body of the book, because we have decided chapter 1 is good. That very important chapter 2 to sustain their interest is good. Now we've got to make sure that these battles that our research told us were important to the subjects we're writing about, the Alabama 15th and our characters, they are very important things that go on. Our pacing and our delivery of what goes on and what the characters do in those times is critically important to maintain our rises in action and our settle to a very good level of pace. Sounds very complicated because it is. I have this fault in my writing. I write way too much detail. I'm getting better at not doing that, but in my earlier books, that's what I did. Is that something that you find in your writing as an independent writer? Remember, we're a team of one. You're one, I'm one when we're writing our own material. We don't have a lot of eyes on our work unless we get beta readers and we get people to just help us to evaluate. My fault of putting that information in drives the story. Remember that pace line, it drives it down. There too much detail. It's just boring, and I'm having a hard time managing that. And I had a hard time in chapter 1. I think I've got a good handle on this book, but in the past, I've had a very hard time with making sure I didn't do that. Tell me what you think about that idea. Tell me how you manage it. Maybe some of your solutions will help me in my writing. And that's what we're doing this entire project about. We're trying to figure out how to create a very good book, write it, and self-publish it together, and get better as independent writers by helping each other. That's our goal in this entire 10 video series. Now, this is part 3. Today is part 3 of the series. We're going to take a break from the series because I have to write the body of the book. It'll take some time to get more writing done so we can come back and check on, the mile marker, where we are. The next one we drop in 4, maybe 5, will give us a good midway point in the book. But until we come back with more of this series, we'll drop in other videos that hopefully have subjects that will help us as independent writers address other issues. And I hope you'll tune in. I hope we will keep our 58 very dedicated viewers and more. Until we get together and we do this next video, I hope you all have great success in your writing. Remember, sit down and write. Be disciplined, be focused. Do that edit, rewrite, and revision. You'll write really good material. So until next Tuesday, hope you have a great week. Take care of yourselves and go out with your family and friends and have some fun. You know how important that is. We'll see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.